Let's sit nice and tall and close the eyes. Take a nice breath in and a nice breath out. Allow yourself to land softly in the moment. On your next exhale, take the hands together in front of the heart. And we'll lift our voices in one Om, followed by the invocation mantras. Taking a breath in. Om. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Ganana Antva Ganapati Gum Havamahe Kavin Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jestarajam Brahmanan Brahmanaspata Anashrinvanu Tibasida Sadhanam Mahaganapataye Namaha Prano Devi Saraswati Vajebhir Vajini Vati Dhinama Vitriyavatu Ano Divo Brahataf Parvatada Saraswati Ajata Gantu Yagnyam Havan Devi Jujushana Gritachi Shagmam No Vachamushati Shrinotu Vagdevyai Namaha. Releasing the hands down, gently fluttering the eyes open. Good morning, good morning, good morning to everybody. Hello, hello. Oh, what a lovely day today. So I thought today we would talk a little bit about stillness and movement in stillness, and why that's such an important concept in the yoga world, in the yoga tradition. When we think of stillness, we think about sitting still, like this. We think about meditation. We think about, sitting in front of our altar or in a special spot, and it's a moment where there's no fluctuation of anything to irritate us. There's no distraction. We're still. The knees don't hurt us. The low back isn't cursing us out. The mind is silent, maybe there's a cute little bird chirping somewhere, but other than that, there's nothing, just stillness. But the reality is, that's nonsense. That's utter nonsense. This universe is not about that kind of imposed stillness. This universe has hurricanes and earthquakes and tsunamis, stars colliding, planets developing, suns burning out. This world has trees crashing, streams with whitewater rapids, has all kinds of things happening, people colliding and then separating, things happening. So why is it that we think that stillness for us should be something different? Why is it that we think that when we make the decision, I'm going to come to stillness now, everything must stop? No, that's nonsense. That's not what it is. It's not about the outside world at all. It's not even about the mind, really. Not when you get down to the crux of it. Stillness is not about the way that the outside world functions or doesn't function. And it's also not necessarily about your mind functioning, because your mind is largely a product of the outside world. So your mind is going to think. Your mind is going to do what it's trained to do, what it's made to do, and what it does really well. It's going to look for bits and pieces of information and grab onto those things and try to do something with them. Even when you've made the decision that you're going to sit still and that everything is going to turn off, your mind says, I'm assessing what you're doing right now. Because the mind in part is what's saying, I'm going to sit still, The intellect on some kind of divine level knows that it's such silliness to think that everything is going to stop just because you made a decision. That brings us to Krishna and Arjuna and that very well-known statement, you have a right to the work only, you don't have a right to the outcome. And that kind of stillness is the outcome. It's a perceived outcome. It's if I have my intention in the right place, if I sit in the proper posture, if I close my eyes, if I focus on my breathing, then something will happen. And that thing that will happen will be stillness. The world will stop irritating me. I will stop irritating me. You will stop irritating me. Irritation will not be present. That's a perceived outcome. We don't have a right to that. So let it go. And start looking at stillness as grace. You ever watch a ballerina or a modern dancer or an artist as they create their art? You know, there's something so gracious about that. There's a stillness in their movements. There's a stillness that we can translate as it's a sort of one-pointed concentration. It's a form of personal absorption into a moment. And it's only when absorption in the moment, presence in the moment escapes us that we become unhappy with what's been created, rip it up and start again. Become unhappy with the discomfort in the knees, get up, move around, fidget, get some props, do something, maybe go to the beach, you know. And then some other day we try it again. It's only when we come out of the moment and into our typical stress of discomfort and of dissatisfaction that all of a sudden that grace escapes us, that graciousness, that sweetness escapes us. So the first thing that we can say is that stillness is actually absorption into the moment, into exactly what it is that you are. And on one level, what you're doing, you know, in a moment, drawing a picture, dancing a dance, walking in the forest, hugging a tree, listening to somebody. Stillness is the ability to be present to that, to whatever it is that you find yourself engaged in a given moment. Even feeling grief, right? To be able to be present to that grief, to accept it for what it is. To be able to even embrace it as a good friend that's trying to support you, protect you, help you to heal. So stillness is very much associated with some kind of movement. It's very much associated with this idea of being absorbed rather than distracted. And you don't have to be sitting in this meditation posture in order to do that. You just don't. It's helpful. Yes, absolutely 100%. It's helpful. But if that's the only place that we look for stillness and we don't consider ourselves a good meditator, then we're never going to find it. Stillness is going to be something that just eludes us. And we'll give it up for the sake of chaos, for the sake of distraction and discomfort. We'll give it up. We'll say, I can't do it. I'm not a good meditator. I can't stand being still. It's like, what kind of a little box have you put stillness into? It's much bigger than that, actually, you know. And we've all experienced stillness in our life. We have. When you are in a moment of really sweet enjoyment. Like, have you ever gone, for me, I love kayaking or hiking, right? So I hike or I kayak and I just stop and I look around and I'm just like, it's just so glorious, this whole life. And there's a contentment there where even though I'm hiking up a really steep mountain, huffing and puffing the whole way and, saying, okay, knee, don't give out on me because there's no cell phone reception out here. Still, in spite of all of that distraction, there is an exquisite beauty present in every given moment. And stillness is required in order to be able to see that, to know that, to feel that, and to be part of that. So even in the midst of really hard work, stillness is there. I suppose stillness is somehow linked with the idea that it's all worth it. That it's all worth it. And I don't mean that it's all worth it like you're going to get some kind of payback. I mean like it's all worth it. That no one moment is more valuable than another. Whether you're hiking up the hill or down, they both have their benefits and their detriments. I always say to my son on the way up the mountain, it seems like we're always hiking up. And then on the way down, I say to him, it seems like we're always hiking down. And he just laughs, But that's what it is. It's like there's always something for us to attach ourselves to try to compare it to something else. To say, this is less and that is more. This is more and that is less. But the reality is, it's all purposeful. All of it has meaning. All of it is valuable to us. You struggle to hike up the mountain so that you can see the breathtaking views along the way, not just at the top. You struggle to keep your balance going down the very steep hill and not fall and break your leg. So that you can have the experience of your own self in this environment where you have to be mindful. So in Ireland, I hiked up Patrick. I've done it twice now. The first time I didn't go all the way because it was about 3 months after I started walking again. And I don't know. People look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, Patrick. I'm like, yeah, totally. But like, no lie, there was no way, Like, it was a beautiful day. It was blue sky and sunny and warm, with a call for drizzles in the afternoon. And I was like, oh, it's a perfect day to drive 2.5 hours to go hike this mountain. So I get out there, and on the way there, the weather starts to turn, and it's suddenly gray and overcast, and it's more than just a drizzle. And so I get there, and I'm like, that's fine. I'll do it anyway. Whatever, I'm walking, I'm celebrating, I'm walking. So I start hiking up this mountain, and it's literally a steep, steep, steep hike. Have any of you done that before? Have you seen pictures of Patrick in Ireland? It's beautiful. It's it's a very strangely shaped mountain. But and they finally put in it's not really a staircase. It's like carved out stones that mimic steps, but then there's all kinds of rubble around it and stuff, and that wasn't done at that time. Only part of it was. So you hike up this really steep, and some people do it barefoot, which baffles my mind. I love it. And so I got maybe I would say a third of the way up. And I just knew it wasn't going to happen. I couldn't, because now it's pouring and the wind is whipping up. And, my knee is yelling at me some profound kind of way. And I'm thinking to myself, that's okay. It was worth it. It doesn't matter if I didn't go to the top. Just this was worth it. But it was raining. So what? But it was windy and cold. So what? It was worth it. And it'll always be worth it. The second time that I went, I was much different. Because then I was over a year out from starting to walk again. And for those of you who don't know, I crushed my knee, my tibial platform, at the dog park 2 years ago, a little bit over 2 years ago. And I had to spend a very great amount of time in a wheelchair, not permitted to stand and put weight on my legs. So I literally was not permitted to walk for 3 months. I had to have assistance with pretty much everything. It was a really profound experience in my life, and one that I was a little surprised that I settled into so easily. And then I wasn't surprised, because it was worth it. It really was. The second time that I did Patrick, we still didn't go all the way to the top. We went almost all the way to the top. Just about. We were like 9/10 of the way there, but then it became very rocky and very, very craggy. And they hadn't quite finished the stairs, the chipped out stone path at that point yet either. And we were very tired by the time that we got there because it's a heck of a hike. So I just sat down and said, this is it. This is fine. You don't have to go to the top. We have to be just right here and just look around and see. The sheep obviously didn't have any problem climbing up on the rocks. A little bit envious there, you know. And looking out over the ocean because, you know, Croagh Patrick is right at the ocean and taking in these breathtaking views. And wherever you find yourself, there's breathtaking views. When the accident happened with my knee, you know, it could have been really mentally detrimental to go from being a very physically active, love to go hiking, kayaking, outdoorsy, gardening, to being not allowed to put weight on my foot. I had to be in a wheelchair with my leg like this for 3 months after surgery, which was a really extremely painful surgery. And I've had people say to me, don't you wish that never happened? I said, no, I don't wish it never happened. Of course not. It was worth it. What do you mean it was worth it? Well, it was worth it because it taught me a lot about myself. It taught me that, you know, whatever the universe brings to me, I do have the ability to be still with it. I do have the ability to handle it. I might not like it in a moment. It might hurt like heck, but I'll still do it. I will still continue because that's what I'm meant to do. That's what you're meant to do. And that's the stillness, the continuance of walking the path through this life with acceptance. We don't have to like what we accept. We don't have to. We don't have to like the fact that we have an injury, or we don't have to like the fact that, you know, they didn't finish the staircase in time and there was some concern, some fear about the craggy aspect of the top of the mountain. We don't have to like that. But what we can do, instead of becoming so bound up in what we like and we don't like, is we could stop and look at where we are and say, this is a pretty beautiful place to be. Period. Even in difficult, like serious, even in war. War is a fact. There has never been a time in the existence of human beings that there has not been a war. And I am absolutely an opponent of violence. I think that we can be warless, but I don't think we will. As long as there's egos running the world, there will never be a time where we do not have war. And even in war, if you stop and look, you'll find beauty. How the hell do you find beauty in war? Because people are coming to each other's aid. Because people are finding their humanity. Because people are growing and expanding in the midst of loss, in the midst of tragedy and heartache. There's strength there. There's inspiration there. There's growth there. There's such deep sorrow that even the deep and the deepest of sorrows has a beauty to it. And the beauty of that deep sorrow is that it touches the human soul in such a way as to provide clarity about what is important, about what really matters. So even in something as tragic as war, there is still a beauty and a stillness there amidst the chaos. Does that make sense? We don't like it though, do we? We don't have to like it. Liking and disliking are the ego's deal, you know? So don't worry about that. You don't have to like it. But what's important is that you see it, that you recognize it, that you know it. Because when we deny it, what we're saying is it's not worth it. And isn't that a horrible thing to say? It's not worth it. It has to be worth it. because there are lives and loves involved. There are people and other beings involved. So it has to be worth it. And the question is, how do we grow beyond that violent tendency? How do we grow beyond the necessity of war in a human-made world? And the answer for that is be a power of peace in the world as you walk through the world. Don't contribute to the power of violence. Be peace in the world. Be the stillness in the world. And that doesn't mean that you just sit there. No. You could do that for a little while. It's really good for your nervous system, and it's great to help to de-stress and all those other things, So do it for a half hour to an hour a day. Absolutely. But the rest of your day, take what you learned as you were sitting in that meditation seat and walk through the world with it. Walk through the world with it so that we stop pointing fingers and saying, well, that's worth it, that's not worth it, you're not worth it. And instead we say, it's all worth it. Because all of it, when it comes together, the sole purpose of all of it is to show us ourselves, is to introduce us to ourselves, is to give us the fertilizer, the fodder, the nourishment, the wisdom, the information that we need in order to come to know ourselves. Can't we just do it without the suffering? Apparently not. Apparently not. Well, what does the suffering show me? That's up to you, what it shows you. Do you become lost in the suffering and do you say to yourself, this is all there is? This is all there is, this is all there's ever going to be. You know you're lying to yourself. It's not all there is, and it's not all there's ever going to be. You know that. You already know that. Because just 2 minutes from that moment, all somebody has to do is tell you a joke, or you put on like Third Rock from the Sun, and you're going to be laughing. So obviously, it's not always going to be like that, and that's not all there is. The only consistent thing that we have in this human experience is change. And we're part of that. We fluctuate crazily. We fluctuate all the time when we know it's happening and when we don't know it's happening. So stillness can't be about just being dormant. There has to be something within the change that is stillness. And the only thing that can be is your ability to be with the change in a way that is less reactive and more accepting, surrendering, and responsive. Acceptance, surrender, and response. Accept, this is happening. Just accept it. It alleviates so much stress when you just accept it. And I pretty much guarantee every single person in this room has had that kind of moment where you've just accepted something and it was like, whole weight off the shoulders, whole weight off the mind. You just accepted it. So acceptance. Acceptance is not crazy. It's not a big deal. It's not complicated. It's not, there's not steps 1, 2, and 3 that you can take to do it. Just do it. Just accept it. Just say, this is the way it is. Period. Now the ego comes in and says, yeah, but I don't like it. Or the ego comes in and says, yeah, but I like it and I don't want it to change. That's the ego. That's just fodder for something else, The acceptance that this is the way that it is. There's peace there. And peace is stillness. And so when I had my accident, that's what happened almost instantaneously. And I credit the yoga, the meditation, and all of it, the teachings, all of it. Because that could have been a really different experience, could have been a very tumultuous experience. When the dog ran into my leg and I went down, and then someone tried to support me in standing up, and I just said, no, I just need to be here with this for a moment. So just leave me. Oh, you don't want to lay there on the ground? No, yeah, I do. Actually, I really, really do. But I want to lay here and just breathe. I just want to breathe. And then a few moments passed, maybe a minute, and I said, okay, I'm ready to attempt to stand up now. I tried to stand up, and as soon as I went to walk, I knew. And I said, okay, I need to go down to the hospital. So got in the car, went down, and it was just boom, boom, boom. Step after step after step of this process of discovering what happened and just being okay with a lot of different things that were going on, including a misdiagnosis and a few other things, and just breathing and saying, it's all for purpose, it's all for purpose. It's absolutely all for purpose. And what purpose could there be in a misdiagnosis? Because the first person that I saw said, there's no break, you're very lucky, it's just inflammation because you twisted it really bad. As soon as I heard those words, I knew they weren't true. And there would have been a time in my life where I would have said, oh, but you're the doctor, you know better. And instead I said, I don't think I agree with you. I didn't get mad, curse him out, call him crazy, act crazy. No, I just said, I don't think I agree with you. But that's okay. And he said, well, that's fine. He said, sometimes these things don't show because, it's the bone is what's called green. And so it might take a couple of days. Just go home, do what you got to do with it. And if it's still hurting you in a couple of days, come back. I went home and I got on the phone with another doctor. And I went to the other doctor and they put the film up onto the screen and lit the light behind it, which the other doctor didn't do. And I know enough about bones to know a fracture when I see one. And I looked at her and I said, is that what I think it is? And she said, oh yeah, you've got a crush injury. You should not be standing on that. And I looked at her and I said, okay, well, I'm sitting down now. And she said, we'll get you a wheelchair. You're not to stand up on it anymore. We have to get this corrected. It really was a trauma thing that needed surgery right away. So let's get you in and get this done. And I'm sharing this with you to just say that it could have been something so much different. My reaction, it could have been, oh my God, I'm 59 years old, however old I was. I'm never going to be the same again. Da, 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 da. Oh my gosh, the hospital. Oh my gosh, this. But no. This has purpose too. And maybe the purpose was to say, slow down. Stop for a little while even. It doesn't change who you are as a person. It just gives you the opportunity to sit with yourself in a different kind of way, to see yourself in a different kind of light, to have compassion for yourself, to have patience with the process. Haven't practiced that in a little while, maybe. Maybe it's time for a refresher course. Here's the refresher course. And so my whole point with sharing that with you is to say that whatever it is that you go through in this life is a teaching moment. We might not like the lesson. That's the ego. Saying, I like it, I don't like it, it hurts, it doesn't hurt, it's great, I never want to let it go. All those kind of thoughts cultivate fear within ourselves. Fear that it will last or that it won't. Fear that it'll always be this way or it'll never be the same. That's so chaotic. Because we say that in the same moment about the same thing. I never wanted to change. I'm bored, I want some adventure. It's like we just don't know how insane we actually sound sometimes. So whatever it is that goes on, and especially those kind of bigger in life things, like injuries and whatnot, these things are meant to give us pause, to remind us that stillness is within us, and that we have to take the time necessary to feel, to investigate the feelings, to see, to investigate what we think we see, to hear, and to investigate what we think we're listening to taste, and to investigate what it is that we think we're tasting. All those things. Because too often times we see and we react in fear, we hear and we react in self-defense, We taste and we react in obsessive compulsive tendencies, right? We smell and we react in repulsion, right? Instead of just paying attention. Paying attention, acceptance. Just pay attention and accept this is what is. And then we surrender. You can't surrender. Surrender is such a big word in yoga, isn't it? It's like all the teachers say, oh, surrender in this posture. And it's like, no, don't even. Not yet. Anyway, first accept the posture. That's why I love yin, because in yin, the first thing is acceptance. You have to accept where you are in that posture and what that posture is bringing to you. And that is some work. That's like being at the gym and trying to lift 220 pounds. You know what I'm saying? It's like hard to accept, but you cannot surrender without acceptance. It's not possible. I'm surrendering. No, you're not. I'm surrendered. Can we change the posture now? I'm surrendering, and yet all the fidgeting is happening. Yeah. You're not going to surrender until you accept. So you have to come into a deep acceptance of, so this is child's pose in this moment, which is going to change in the next moment. Fine. I'll just be here and I'll focus on my breath and let it be what it is. I will allow it to be what it is. Acceptance. And that is automatically followed by a certain kind of surrender. The surrender necessary, surrender of the ego, in order to really, truly accept something the way it is. That's got to be linked with a surrender of the egoic reaction. I like this, I don't like this, I want this, I don't want this. So that little surrender, but then there's an even bigger surrender. There's the surrender of the underlying egoic currents that put blame or egoic purpose to a thing. Well, I'm going to surrender in my, foot behind my head pose because I want them to take a really good picture of me or for someone to tell me that I did it really well. So the next level of surrender is surrendering those types of thoughts and ideas and impressions if someone's going to say or do something that's going to make me feel good. So what's lacking there is acceptance of the difficulty of the moment, acceptance of the ease of the moment, and just an appreciation for it for what it is, versus going into the mind and looking for an outcome. Someone's going to say something to me. Someone's going to tell me. Someone's going to want to take my picture. Someone's going to put me on the cover of Yoga Journal. I had an individual. I had never met them. I've only ever talked to them on the phone one time, and I guess they wanted to come into our yoga teacher training program, and we have fairly strict requirements about that. And so I said, well, I don't know you. You've never been here. You've never taken a class with me. She goes, well, I've listened to a couple of your talks, and I like what you talk about. And I said, well, that's a great place to begin. Of course, absolutely. But still, tell me a little bit about your practice. Tell me a little bit about yoga, and why do you want to be a teacher? And her answer to me was very telling, because it's proof positive of the way that the ego functions. And I'm not saying this story to you to put this person down in any way, shape, or form. I'm using this as an illustration about how the ego tricks us. She said, oh, well, I've been going to yoga for about 6 months. And I go maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And every time I'm in class, I look around and I'm like, some of these people have been coming here for years and I do it so much better than them. I could be the teacher. And I said to her, not yet you can't. At least not from our school. Because there's a humility that needs to be there where you're not looking at another person and saying, who am I compared to them? And putting them down in order to bolster yourself up, to justify. No, that doesn't work there. That's not acceptance. That's not surrender. That's not. That is evidence of an ego that is longing to belong and looking to force the belonging. And we've all done something like that before. Whoever we are, we've all done something like that before. So the surrender, the first part of the surrender is to let go of those types of thoughts as best you can. And the only way to do that is by accepting the situation for what it is. And in that particular situation, the situation for what it is happening on her yoga mat, not anybody else's. When you're in yin class, it's you on your mat. You're not on somebody else's yoga mat. You don't comment on them. Leave them alone. Let them practice their practice. You comment on your own self and do so with mindfulness, not with negative commentary. Acceptance. Oh, this posture is really uncomfortable. It is. Now, am I going to react to the discomfort of this posture? Or am I going to simply respond by breathing more and by seeing what this actually is and giving myself the opportunity to witness change in action? Because the throbbing in the thigh or the kink in the neck, it'll go away in a moment if you let it. If you let it. So acceptance and then surrender. And then what did I say the third component was? Who wrote it down? Response. And then all of a sudden, you find that you're in pigeon pose or some other posture. And instead of complaining to yourself about your lack of flexibility and about why is the teacher holding me here so long and and I do this so much better or worse than everybody else does this, instead of that dialogue going on in your mind, all you become concerned about is integrity. Your own integrity. The integrity of your relationship with the posture, the integrity of your relationship with yourself, and compassion for everyone in your vicinity who is also struggling with integrity. Integrity might mean putting a block under the knee, or a bolster under the back of the knees, or a blanket over yourself if you're chilly. Integrity might be to not give yourself permission to tell yourself lies about yourself or about others. Integrity might be to recognize that you really do have an ocean of peace inside of you and a pebble of violence. Why are you taking the pebble over the ocean? Why not just swim in the ocean? And leave the pebble to break down back into the ocean, which it will eventually. All rocks wear away eventually. And where do they go to? They go back to the ocean in the form of minerals and whatnot, So those are the three: acceptance, surrender, and responsiveness. And the responsiveness is just being able to see clearly what is needed, when it's needed. And I think it's really important to just point out that in the acceptance, in the surrender, and in the responsiveness, it's not about fixing anybody else. And it's not even about fixing yourself. It's about seeing clearly what it is that you're doing, what you're doing to emphasize or feed into the thoughts, the habits, the behaviors that continually harm yourself and others. And the moment that you look at those behaviors and thoughts honestly and fully, you won't do them anymore. If those thoughts continue, it's because you're justifying them to yourself. Well, yeah, I do still think poorly about that person. I talk about them, whatever, but it's because, right? Or yeah, I do give myself a hard time if I can't touch my toes, but it's because you're busy justifying. You got to stop the justifying. Justifying only says, go ahead, continue doing it. You got another good excuse, and yeah, go ahead. When you genuinely know and see clearly, you'll stop that behavior. You'll stop that thought. Because there won't be a justification. There won't be. Because you'll know that the justification is just another aspect of, at best, something that is 99% untrue at best. At its fullest, it's 100% untrue. Does that make sense? Yeah? Do a time check. What questions or thoughts do you have? What reflections? Yes.
So what I hear you saying is from the first quote about you have the right to the work but not the outcome. So in this instance, what you're saying is that the work is really the acceptance, the surrender, and then the response and the ability to respond. My question is within that, how do you discern when the ego is going off the rails versus what is really true in this situation? Because I really liked about what you said about climbing up the mountain. And how do we discern if we're just giving up versus pushing ourselves too far versus being okay with what is?
That's a great question. Where do we begin with that one? So, giving up. What is giving up? What is giving up? It's a trick of the ego, this idea of giving up. Does it matter if I ever get to the top of Croagh-Patrick?
No.
Am I going to find myself there? Am I going to fix the world from there? Am I going to do some great feat from there? No. The idea of giving up or having failed comes from me or from society as it imposes it upon me. You have to go to the top. Even something as like passive and not intended to be harmful as someone saying, oh, you only made it 3/4 of the way. You got to go all the way to the top. You don't know what you're missing. Mm-hmm. It's like there's nothing at the top that isn't at the middle or the bottom if you're present to the moment. So the concept of giving up or failure is a trick of the ego. And that's what you don't fall into, is the trick of the ego telling you, you're not good enough, you've given up. Giving up. What could you give up? Tell me something. Give me an example. What could you possibly give up? Like, what would be giving up?
So if you are a musician and you want to be a star, and you have practiced and gone through all of these things, and you were told no and no and no, and you finally just stop and become an accountant.
Is that giving up? Is it giving up? Or is it redirecting your energy elsewhere, accompanied with severe disappointment because things didn't turn out the way you wanted, because you were more invested in the goal than the work? Because if you're telling me that an individual who went to music school and really applied themselves to try to become a musician, they are a musician, first of all, okay? So right there, That's a folly of the ego. They are a musician, but they weren't a successful musician. They didn't get into the Philharmonic. That is right, musicians. Yeah, I got it. They didn't get into there. That doesn't mean they're not a musician. They are a musician. So instead of honoring the work that they have done and this skill, this mastery that they have cultivated within themselves to whatever degree they've cultivated it, they've decided to turn themselves into a different direction and invest in learning how to become an accountant. Right? That's all. That's all it is. It's not that they've given up. It's that they do not accept. Oh, yeah. It's not that they've given up. It's that they do not have the skill to accept that they are doing, they're in the midst of the work, and that's what matters. They say, I didn't get into the concert hall, I didn't get to be second chair. And that's what is defining their experience. So that's goal-oriented. And as long as an individual is goal-oriented over process, over work-oriented, then can they ever really be happy with it? They're always going to look for something else after they've gotten what they think they want. So that's not giving up. That's just not having clarity. Yeah. But we call it giving up. Failure. And it's like, don't put your labels on me. Thank you. You're going to go be an accountant? Be a good accountant. Good. We need people to show people how to utilize their money and save for a rainy day and all that kind of stuff. So just be a good one. Be an ethical accountant. You're going to leave behind your dreams and go pursue something else? Well, then make that new thing you're going to pursue your dreams. That's all. That's all. Yeah. That's a good example.
So I think like this week, I recently heard you say that same thing, and it has been just playing in my head because I'm a goal-oriented person.
Yeah.
So how do you set goals?
You can set goals. It's fine. Just see them with a little bit of humor.
Right.
You can set goals. Absolutely. You can say, by next year, I want to have $20,000 saved in the bank, a second location open, and a new car. Right? Okay, that's fine. But just know that between now and then, so we had Hurricane Sandy. That affected a lot of people. And a lot of those people had a lot of goals of where they wanted to be next year. But Hurricane Sandy came along. Do y'all remember her? Oh, yeah. And there's still areas of the Jersey Shore that haven't recovered. There's still areas where there's houses upside down and people's entire lives were displaced. So have your goals, but have them with a grain of salt and understand that you can't control when the next Hurricane Sandy or whatever it's named is coming along. So instead of having a goal and being solely invested in that goal where you see yourself as having failed or given up if you don't make that goal, say that's great. In a year from now, perhaps that's what'll happen. But in the meantime, I'll be present to the storms as they arrive, and I'll be present to them as they leave. Because that's all we're going to get between now and then. Storms and clear days. Storms and eyes of the storm. Change after change after change after change. It's fine to have a goal. Say, I'm going to go to college and be a doctor. I've given this story as an example before. The person who, comes from a family of surgeons, wants to be a surgeon, wants to go to school to be a surgeon. It's the only thing they ever talk about. They didn't play sports in school. They had no appreciation for literature. They didn't go hang out with their friends very often. They just medicine, surgery. They're like this close to graduating medical school and going into their residency to be a surgeon. There's a horrific accident. They lose a hand. But you can be a teacher. Can't be a teacher, because can't be a surgeon. That's a lie that you tell yourself. I can't be this because I don't have that. Yeah, just don't get caught up in those kind of fables. In any given moment, there's so much that you can do and be and see and feel. In any moment, all you have to do is stop. Come into stillness. Just step into the eye of the storm and look around. Have an appreciation and a compassion for the struggle of all others and yourself. Recognize that most things are not going to turn out the way you want them to. Probably on the order of 99%. It's always going to be too hard or too easy. It's going to be too much of one thing and not enough of another. So, fine. Let it be what it is. And in the meantime, just do the work. And so now what is the work? Is the work just drudging through the day and making the sandwiches or working at the register or doing whatever it is a person does? Is that what the work is? No, that is not the work. Those are things you do. Those are roles you play. What is the work? The work is, who am I really? Who am I really? Am I a crushed knee? Am I a low back that is losing its flexibility because of degenerative disc disease? Am I a 60-year-old? Am I the director of an ashram? Is that who I really am? Who am I really? Those are roles that I play and things I encounter in life. Who am I? And that is the work. Yeah.
What I'm hearing is like the attachment to the outcome has a lot to do with where we put our worth and value, so that we can have a dream or a goal or even maybe a soul calling. But as soon as I put I am more worthy because of this outcome, or my happiness is linked to that outcome, that's where.
Yeah, my happiness, my worth, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's not linked to that. It has nothing to do with that. It really doesn't. It has to do with knowing yourself. And that's just kind of an extra, Like if you hit the lottery, great, wonderful, woohoo. That doesn't make you any better of a person, You become a doctor, great, but that doesn't make you any better of a person, You become a criminal, great, but that doesn't make you any better of a person. What makes you the best version of you is knowing who you are, really who you are. And once you know who you are, and we all catch little glimpses along the way, the truth of the innermost self. But once you really allow yourself to be absorbed in that, you won't be a criminal or an unethical doctor or a liar or a cheat or a thief or I don't know, you put it there. You won't be any of those things. You also won't be a best friend. You won't be any of those things that you value so greatly either. Why? Because those types of labels are not necessary for the individual who is true to the innermost self. Those labels don't mean anything because they're opinions. You call somebody your best friend, it's a temporary situation, I pretty much guarantee you. It's rare that people carry a best friend for more than a couple of years. And most, it's only a few months. Those are labels. And they're ego labels for the most part. So you won't, once you begin to absorb yourself into the work of the self, you stop worrying about those things. Because there's something far more important. And important is a funny word, but it's the one I'm going to use right now. Something far more important. And that is cultivating the skill and the ability within yourself to witness truly your own suffering and the suffering of all other beings and not contribute to it. Therein lies the work. Any other questions or reflections right now? So no matter what you're going through in your life right now, no matter whether it's wonderful, you're at the top of the mountain, or you're standing at the bottom of the mountain, or you're somewhere in the middle wondering how the hell you're going to get up or down. No matter where you find yourself right now, stop and look inside. Do the innermost work of coming to know yourself, appreciating yourself, living this life for yourself. And in doing so, you'll find great fulfillment. Because the one who has found themselves is a divine servant and inspiration to all other beings, which is not an egoic inspiration. It's simply evidence that it can happen, that it's true, that there is a difference between the ego you and the heart. And just going around saying, well, I'm just my heart, is not proof of that. It's just not. Putting it on a t-shirt means nothing. It's just another label. No, got to do the work. Got to do the work. All right, let's sit tall, close the eyes. And draw the hands together in front of the heart. We'll lift our voices in one beautiful Om, followed by the All Beings mantra. May we all come to know the truth of the innermost self for the sake of ourself and for the sake of all other beings. Taking a breath in. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Om Shri Matre Namaha. Thank you all so much for being here today. Wonderful to gather with each and every one of you. I wish you well on your path, on your journey. May you find peace, peace, peace. Thank you. So they're serving brunch now. If you're going down to have some brunch,